Burgundy in blood. The Kindred. An overview of the vampire. The kindred is a term used to refer to the vampires as members of the vampiric race as a whole. Our lore focuses on the Cainites, descendants of the biblical Cain, cursed with a thirst for blood, vulnerability to sunlight and immortality. They are forever subject to the beast, their raging animal urges of hunger, fear and rage. The Cainites generally live in cities, which are run feudally by Cainite princes. Life in a city is one of constant political manipulation and paranoia, as the powers of the city vie for power, control and food. They are creatures ruled by fear, most importantly, the fear of exposure to the kine, everyday humanity. Since the Inquisition, the majority of the Cainites have lived under the masquerade, an enforced campaign to hide the existence of their kind from humanity. Vampires are created through the embrace. During the embrace, a vampire drains a candidate of all their blood and replaces it with a single drop of their own. This causes the corpse to rise as a famished vampire, usually instantly, though those of the highest generations may appear to lie dead for some time before they awaken. The vampire who initiates the embrace is the sire, the new vampire is the sire's child. When a vampire is embraced, their internal organs wither away, and almost all their body fluids are replaced by blood. The only exception being the stomach, which pulses with the blood that the vampire consumes. Vampires use blood, also called vitae, for a variety of purposes. Blood replaces most bodily fluids, so vampires will cry blood and sweat blood under certain circumstances. Blood is also used to get up and move. Every night, vampires expend a certain amount of blood to rise. In addition, vampires can use blood to enhance their physical attributes and use supernatural powers called disciplines. Blood is also used to create ghouls. Finally, vampires can use blood to heal damage. Every vampire has a generation, numbered from 1, Cain, to 15 in the canon. A vampire is always one generation higher than his sire, thus farther removed from Cain. Generation has a variety of effects. Mental powers do not work on vampires of lower generation, and the lower a generation the more potent a vampire can become. Players are invited to play vampires that are generation 7 to 11 and can use the White Wolf Wiki to see more powers and general vampire information. Cainite Society. Nominally, every vampire is embraced into a clan, which is a line of vampires tracing their ancestry back to a common antediluvian. Each clan has specific strengths and weaknesses, as well as their own distinct history. A vampire without a clan is caitiff, generally a second-class citizen in vampiric society. While they are still globalized, most vampires are generally confined to one city like the mortal feudal system. At the apex of the power structure is the prince, NPC, who is generally served by a council of primogen. The prince controls access to feeding grounds which he allocates as fiefs. There are additional city offices, notably the harpies and sheriff. Primogen is a term used to describe officials that, at least in theory, serve as the representatives of their respective clans to the prince of a city ruled by the sect. The term is both singular and plural, and refers to both individual representatives and to the Primogen Council as a whole. Theoretically, a Primogen is the oldest vampire of his clan, and serves as a representative and voice for the clan in city affairs. In general, the ruling vampires of the city value the Primogens and their opinions. They are called in to consult on decisions, and their recommendations carry great weight. The sheriff is the prince's right-hand kindred, responsible for the physical enforcement of princely decree. Some sheriffs are diligent masters at arms, while others are thuggish, bloodthirsty brutes who abuse their authority to torment those beneath their station. A sheriff may appoint hounds to assist him, or the prince may appoint them, in the interests of curtailing a sheriff's overt power. A harpy's word influences the domain's attitudes and can be a powerful supporter of the status quo or a force for insidious change. Harpies are rarely appointed directly, and kindred rarely trust those who are. Instead, a harpy paradoxically becomes so by acting as a harpy. The harpy's role is often intertwined with domain politics, and it is a bold or foolish prince who neglects those vampires who represent the cutting edge of popular opinion in his domain. The traditions are the fundamental laws of kindred society, supposedly handed down by Cain himself. The first tradition, covenant. Thy blood makes thee my brood, crafted in my image. My curse is thine, and my salvation is thine. I stand before and above thee as God regent. I am the way, my traditions my covenant. Renounce me and renounce all hope. There is hierarchy, lower the generation or closer to Cain are more powerful and above thee. The second tradition, domain. Thy domain is thine own concern. All others owe thee respect while in it. None may challenge thy word while in thy domain. The third tradition, progeny. Thou shalt only sire another with the permission of thine elder. If thou createst another without thine elder's leave, both thou and thy progeny shall be slain. The fourth tradition, accounting. Those thou create are thine own children. Until thy progeny shall be released, thou shalt command them in all things. Their sins are thine to endure. The fifth tradition, destruction. Thou art forbidden to destroy another of thy kind. The right of destruction belongeth only to thine elder. Only the eldest among thee shall call the blood hunt. The sixth tradition, masquerade. Thou shalt not reveal thy true nature to those not of the blood. Doing such shall renounce thy claims of blood. Courts of Love. Court of the Golden Swan. Courtly love was a mortal inspiration adopted with a great passion by the clan Toreador. The principle of courtly love is that a knight holds his lady, generally an unattainable one, as the pinnacle of virtue and beauty, and does excellent deeds in her name, all in return for attention. The lady is expected to support her suitor. To what extent this model remains ideal and to what extent it sanctions adultery is a matter for each pair of lovers. Cainites are drawn to the idea because it is a chance to escape damnation, to love and be loved without tasting blood. While scions who uphold notions of chivalry often support these courts, the road of humanity easily holds the greatest love and support for them. Unlike their mortal counterparts, they have become a source of both emotional and significant practical power. While the courts rarely issue direct commands to local princes, a courtly queen or king has great persuasive authority. The Canaanite and mortal courtiers who crowd her or his court looking for favor are quite willing to destroy rival by innuendo, duel, or outright assassination. As in mortal counterparts, each court has a queen or kings, often chosen by popular acclaim. The queens and kings set the rules by which the games of courtly love are played, encourage those who play well, punish those who err, and occasionally deign to teach the new and inexperienced. An example was that I saw a blaze of chart. She found stained glass and architecture fascinating. Canaanites with skills in sculpture, painting and metallurgy have an easier time finding favor in her court. Our local court is Court of the Golden Swan, representing the Duchy of Burgundy and the tale of the Knight of the Swan. Burgundian lands expand across France and into modern-day Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, etc. Therefore, the Court of the Golden Swan has 4 representations within Burgundy, 3 queens and 1 king. They are either Toreador or Ventrue only. When our story starts, the vampire players will vote for those that put their name forward out of character, and we will start our story there. After in character will take place should queens or kings lose favor and their glory, they will be replaced in character. Chivalry was an idealized code of behavior for warriors, to instruct them in the correct ways of behavior. The golden rule of chivalry was to protect the weaker, whether women, children or elders, as well as the code for chivalric love. Chivalry included all the virtues, loyalty, discipline, gallantry and courtesies, honor, and proper ways of courting a lady. There were 3 types of chivalry practiced. Chivalry to fellow man. Knights were famed for their battle prowess. But a chivalric knight only committed violence in a proper place, the battlefield. He protected women, children and the aged. Chivalry to his faith. A knight vowed to protect the innocent and uphold his faith, wherever he traveled. Most of all, he would be a beacon of light against evil in the world and stamp it out where it was found. Chivalry to women, this includes all forms of courtly love. The idolization of a noble and bourgeoisie female was accepted and expected. A knight chose a lady to honor. His first duty was to her and, after her, all other ladies. There was also a code for women, though quite different from its male counterpart. It included being true to your knight who served you and upholding the expected virtues of piety, chastity, in most circumstances, and purity. In the late 1100s, Andreas Capellanus' treatise De Amore, concerning love, was released containing provocative ideas such as marriage is no real excuse for not loving. Most courtly love affairs were highly secret but allowed for the release of emotional and sexual love outside of an arranged marriage. Toreadors have taken the concept of courtly love to new art. The added dimension of worshipping a mortal lady or lord, vowing to protect a mortal, or committing violence in the pursuit of perfect faith created drama that was endlessly fascinating to them. The focus and obsession of the locus amoenus or pleasant place was the worship of beauty, in all forms. It allowed the toreadors to pursue the subjects of their forbidden love in secret, in an atmosphere without judgment. This loose collective of toreador could also debate the merits of potential new childer, though their decisions were not binding. Sometimes a child was embraced, regardless of how the group felt, if their sire was passionate enough. Keep in mind, this court of love is the fabric of vampiric society and how they interact with the mortal world, for those mortals are ignorant that they are dining, celebrating, fighting, and loving in the beds of the kindred. Purity, chastity and other delicacies are the virtues of medieval practices. However, much like everything else in life, they are a facade shown to the public. What happens behind closed doors is encouraged. Be sure not to get caught or have your reputation ruined, as that is a death in itself. Knights and the Garu. Most Garu regard vampires as servants of the worm and attack them on sight. Thus, discussion between the two races is incredibly rare and neither side really understands the other, aside from recognition of the mutual antagonism. As most vampires prefer civilization over the wild, unlike the werewolves, known encounters between the two are infrequent but usually violent. Most kindred regard werewolves, or lupins, as they call them, as feral chaotic things that, if not controlled right, can do serious damage to life and limb. Also, most vampires who do know of werewolves note that most werewolves stay clear. For the most part, both live amongst each other without knowing unless the masquerade is broken. Our next vampire chapter will focus on the individual clans. For more information, please take a look at the White Wolf Wiki.